In January this year, I visited Kosciuszko National Park with the Snowy Mountains Sustainable Management Group. I travelled throughout 2/3 of the northern end of Kosciuszko, where the New South Wales Government claims there are over 12,511 brumbies. After a full day of searching, we found just 24 brumbies. If the government's claim on the number of brumbies were correct, I should have seen thousands. Here's the truth. The methodology used by the government to estimate populations of wild animals is seriously flawed, as demonstrated in the recent inquiry into the health and well-being of kangaroos and other macropods in New South Wales. We have no idea how many brumbies there are in Kosciuszko, and the numbers pushed by the government are likely to be grossly exaggerated in the same way that the number of kangaroos we have are grossly exaggerated. Right now, the government continue to cause stress and controversy by sending horses at Kosciuszko National Park to knackeries rather than using scientifically sound methods to understand the true number of horses in Kosciuszko, and by failing to use other humane solutions. And there are other solutions. A wild horse has the same capacity to feel pain and fear as a native animal, and their lives deserve the same level of dignity and respect. We must protect both native animals and the horses residing in the park. In fact, we have a duty to do so. Aerial shooting, ground shooting, and trapping and taking horses to slaughterhouses are shockingly cold-hearted courses of actions that should never have been considered or carried out by this government. In addition to sanctioning these cruel, barbaric methods, the government have continued to demonise these innocent wild horses while completely ignoring other causes of damage to the park. Brumby groups recently wrote to the new Minister for the Environment, calling on him to visit Kosciuszko and to see for himself the number of brumbies that are in the park while meeting with the locals and hearing their concerns. I echo the calls from the community for the Minister to visit Kosciuszko himself, and I encourage him to take up the offer by local community groups.
It was great, and I think the numbers are clearly over-exaggerated. I had a good look around, and I reckon we'd have been lucky to see 700 or 800 all up, in my opinion.
You'd be generous to say there was 700 or 800. There'd be probably less than that. It was pretty hard to see any brumbies at all, I would say.
About 350, 400 from my side.
Yeah.
I wasn't sure if I was recounting ones when we were turning. Yeah.
But definitely nowhere near 14,000, 10,000, 5,000. No.
I'd say by a day, we'd be lucky to see probably 250, 300.
Yeah.
Not even that, really.
And you were up there, Rod, for what, 2 hours?
2 hours.
Good 2 hours at least.
At least, yeah.
We obviously went over the country that is the habitat for the horses. We
Yep.
went up over the scrubbery out in the plains where the feed is and where the water is.
Yep.
And there certainly wasn't anywhere near those numbers.
Mm.
So whoever's doing the counting, I'm glad they're not my accountant or my bank manager.
Right, so trapping definitely has to stop, doesn't it?
Well, there's no need for it. There doesn't appear to be any need for it whatsoever.
Right, okay. Do you agree with that, Will?
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Look, I just thought they were some of the loneliest creatures I've ever seen. There were so few.
Mm. It's pretty sad, isn't it? That's why we're
Thank you, Mr Deputy President. I wish to report to Parliament about my experience recently in the Kosciuszko National Park while investigating my concerns over brumby numbers. I recently had the opportunity to fly over the National Park by helicopter. The purpose of the flight was to observe the Australian Brumby in the wild and to try and get a true understanding on the number of horses in the park. We had perfect flying conditions, Mr Deputy President, with no wind and crystal clear blue skies. And as you would know, this is important if one wants to do aerial observations. We set out from Tumut Airport and concentrated on what is referred to as the northern block of the National Park. We flew over areas known as Long Plain, Kyandra, Kurungo Plain, Wild Horse Plain, Boggy Creek Plain, Coolaman Plain and Tantatangra Plain. Now, it's important to identify these areas, Mr Deputy President, because there is agreement that this is where 85% of the Brumby population is. And of note, we spent over 2 hours flying over these locations. Now, in 2 hours, again, as you would well know, in a helicopter, you can cover a fair bit of territory. Prior to being invited on this flight, I looked at what is known as the 2020 Cairns Wild Horse Population Survey. And this is the survey that National Parks and Wildlife rely upon for the basis of their trapping scheme and population target. This report was authored by Stuart Cairns and was a government-sponsored and funded aerial survey. The Cairns survey estimated that there is a whole of park Brumby population of over 14,000 horses. The report also cites that 85% of the Brumby population is within the northern block. Therefore, according to that survey, over 12,000 Brumbies are located in the northern block. Having read this information, I can say I was concerned about those large numbers and didn't think that such a large number was a sustainable or manageable number of horses to be roaming the Kosciuszko National Park. And I believe that that's the conclusion most people would arrive at. However, Mr President, I wish to report to this Parliament that what I saw in no way correlated to the information provided in the Cairns survey. Mr Deputy President, Mark Twain's quote of lies, damn lies and statistics came flooding back to me. In over 2 hours in the air, flying over where the National Parks and Wildlife agree that 85% of the park's horse population live, we only counted 992 horses. And I repeat that, 992. The often quoted Cairns survey estimated the Brumby population in that area of the park to be over 12,500. Now, if that is to be believed, that means we missed approximately 90% of the horses. Now, not only is that unbelievable, but it's impossible. Now, sure, I'm the first to admit that it would have been impossible for us to see every single horse in that part of the park. But to miss 90%, come on, that's just straight out unbelievable. And the big question is, where were these 11,000 other horses? Were they hiding under rocks or behind trees? I don't think so. They just do not exist. I have a couple of interesting points to make here, Mr Deputy President. Using the GIPA process, interested parties have made a revealing discovery. In September 2019, National Parks and Wildlife conducted a horse count flight across this same territory, the northern block of the park, and counted 3,110 Brumbies. Similarly, in June 2020, National Parks and Wildlife conducted another aerial count, again over the same area, and on this occasion they counted only 2,468. These figures, that seem to me to be more realistic, were only discovered by GIPA applications by concerned citizens. The big question is, why did National Parks and Wildlife not publish these figures? Was it an inconvenient truth? Mr Deputy President, also observed from the air were a number of trap sites still used by National Parks and Wildlife to trap and remove horses from the park. In November 2021, the government released the Wild Horse Heritage Plan, which stated that the population target for Brumbies is 3,000. Taking that target in mind and looking at the result of the unpublished surveys and making my own observations from the air, why is trapping still taking place? If trapping continues unabated, this will lead to the extinction of the iconic Snowy Mountain Brumby. Mr Deputy President, I call for an unbiased and transparent count to be undertaken using independent auditors to determine the true figures. I call upon the Minister to do what I did and take a flight over the park to see for himself, and in the meantime, a moratorium should be placed on further trapping until that count is done. It is the only fair and reasonable way to proceed.
Justice Party will continue to campaign for a halt on all lethal action towards Brumbies and for an urgent review on the methodology used to estimate the population of Brumbies and other wild animals in New South Wales. It is time to stop the killing of Brumbies.